Good morning. All right, how are we? That volume okay? I feel like I'm really loud. Marianne, did you feel like that? Okay. Thank you for the kind words about the book, and thank you for having me here today. I love to come to Texas because I sound sort of like you. So I'm from Tennessee, and I'll just tell you a really quick story. How great to get to have all that music this morning, to stand up and get our bodies awake and get us ready to go. But my quick story is several years ago, I went to the Ohio Early Childhood Association meeting, and it was their conference for the year, and it was in Cincinnati, and my keynote presentation was about like this, 8:30 in the morning, except for it was in a huge arena where they were also having their exposition hall. So they kind of had us blocked off, and all the while I was talking, there were forklifts and people carrying in boxes on either side of us. So all these people are sitting, 2,000 people. And then all you hear during my presentation is beep, beep, pop, pop, and a lot of talking. And I was frankly just so excited to be done with it, and I felt so good that most people seemed to be listening to me. There was a lot of distraction. And when I finished, I was sitting down signing some books, and a lady came up to me and she said, "I just want to tell you, I don't care what anybody says about you. After we got used to listening to you, you had a lot of important things to say." Now, in Tennessee, we would call that a backhanded compliment. So I was like, "Thank you." I really didn't know what she meant. But what she meant was I had a funny accent. And so once they got used to hearing my voice, and I don't think most of you all will have a problem with my accent, right? So when I say y'all, you're cool with that. And I will use some of my southern sayings with that. But I am really happy to be here. I love to come to Austin. You get off the plane and you go get your bags, and there's guitars standing there looking at you, and you go, "Welcome to Austin." So thank you. And I'm here to talk about sensory integration today. How many of you guys, raise your hand, have heard of sensory integration before? Most people have heard about it, and that's wonderful. When I first wrote this book, Griffin House came to me and said, "Hey, you're an OT, right?" Yes, and I'd already written 2 books for them, but they were early childhood books. And they said, "You're an OT?" "Yeah." And they said, "You know anything about sensory integration?" I said, "Yeah, because I am trained in sensory integration and have been for 20 years, and that's my specialty area of occupational therapy." And they said, "Well, would you want to write a book about it?" And I said, "Yeah," because it's so important. And I thought educators, I've spent my life working with teachers and working in early intervention and also in school systems, and telling teachers about sensory integration. So I wrote this book with my mom, and some of you all, if you look at the book when you come out afterwards, you'll notice it's Isbell and Isbell. And that's because my mom is an early childhood professor, and she actually came, I don't know how, several years ago, 2 years ago, and keynoted for you. So if I sound like her, yes, if some of you all are having flashbacks, because we sound just alike. But she's an early childhood professor, so we got to write it together and take my information on sensory integration and make it really usable for the classroom and really simple, easy things that you can do to make a big difference. So here we go. Are we ready? Okay. So, oops. So here's our topic. I think you have to write this down. So if you haven't already written this down, here's your title for today. Okay. We're going to start with something really easy. What is sensory integration? Let's talk about that. Sensory integration is a neurological brain process wherein your brain takes in all the sensory information from your environment and organizes that, puts it in little files, and then sends out signals to your body and to how to respond to those inputs. So it is a normal neurological process. Everybody has it. Everybody's brain does it. And some people's brains are better at it than others. Okay. So my first question for you guys is, and those of you that have your handouts, don't look ahead, don't cheat. And let me ask you, how many senses are there? Shout it out. 5, 6, I heard. 7, ding, 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 ding. The true answer is 7. Okay, so there are 7 senses. Now in Tennessee, one of our state standards for kindergarten is that they learn the 5 senses. I have a kindergartner who actually started yesterday because my children are in year-round school at our university campus school. So they started yesterday. And so she will be learning about the 5 senses. Okay, but there aren't 5, there are 7. And those 2 that we don't talk about very much are the 2 most important senses, I think, that are going on, okay? And the ones that we have a lot of problems with. So here are your 7 senses listed, and you all know those first 5. Let's say them together. Vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, okay? Those are the 5 that we teach in kindergarten. So the other 2 are what I call lovingly the wicked stepsisters of the senses. Now, any of you guys like Disney? I'm a big Disney fanatic. Any of you like Disney? Am I the only one? Okay, so I really like Disney. Love it, love it, love it. So I call them the wicked stepsisters. So if you know anything about wicked stepsisters, you know that you try to forget about them, but they can really rock your world. They can really mess with the whole family dynamics. So that's what these 2 are. And the first one is vestibular. So say that one with me. Vestibular. And the second is proprioception. Oh gosh, you all are so good. I'm not kidding. It took my mom 6 months to learn how to say that word. So that's what we in Tennessee call a quarter word. Do you all say that? It's not worth 5 cents. It's not worth 10 cents. It's a quarter word. Yeah? Okay, so everybody's going to stand up because we're going to practice our senses. Okay, so you're in the habit of standing up, so no groaning already this morning. No groaning. You've been singing, moving around. So we're going to do vestibular first. Okay, and you don't have a lot of space, so if you want to spread out a little bit, that would probably be good, or make sure you've got some space under your feet and don't trip over your purses. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to spin. Okay, now, you can go at your own speed. You can go fast or you can go slow. And I'm not going to tell you when to stop. I'm going to let you go until you want to stop. But then we're going to do something afterwards, okay? So ready, go. Let's spin. Okay, so some of you are going very, very slow. Keep going if you can. Some of you are going very fast. Some of you have already stopped. Okay, stop. And stand on one leg and do your best yoga tree. Can anybody do that? Whoa, I can't even do it, and I have not been spinning. Okay, how'd you do with that? Let's try the other direction because I got to even you out. Okay, so if you spin to the right, now spin to the left and go. Okay, go, 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 go. And stop and close your eyes and stand on one leg. Stop, close your eyes, stand on one leg. Okay, taken from a place of love, because I am a Baptist girl through and through. Y'all look like a bunch of drunks. Okay, no. What does it do to you? It makes you feel off balance. So your vestibular sense is your sense of balance and movement. Okay, movement and balance. Your senses, for all of your senses, you have sensory receptors. For auditory, your sensory receptors are your ears. For vision, your sensory receptors are your, all right, you got it. So where are your sensory receptors for vestibular? Your ears, your inner ears. Way down deep in your inner ears, there are some semicircular canals, there are little hair follicles, and there's liquid that flows across those. And that's what tells you that you're moving. Now, I know you're still standing, and that's okay, because we learn well. And if you come to my next session, you'll find out how important it is to be standing to learn, okay? So, as we age, there is a developmental progression of all of our senses. We don't come right out of the womb being able to walk or balance on one leg, nor do we come out being able to visualize people's faces or things at a far distance. So there is a developmental sequence for our brain and how we develop for all of our senses. Our vestibular sense comes into play probably is fully developed. Well, let you guess. What age do you think most of your senses are fully functioning at an adult capacity? Marianne knows this answer. We won't ask her because she knows a lot about brain development. So think brain development. When is most of your brain development done, finished? 45. Did you? Oh, I thought you said 45. No, because I'm really like that age right now, and I will tell you, I'm already done with that. Really, by age 7, we're still refining because most of your brain development is going to be done by 8, the largest majority. So your senses are not fully functioning until age 7. Now think about that in terms of coordination. Right? How many of y'all have kids that play t-ball or soccer? I've been a soccer coach for years. I start with them in preschool, the 4 and 5-year-olds, because that's my peeps. Just like you all like them, like they're my age. And they're just basically a human amoeba. They like just flow around, and they're all bumping into each other, and they're just all over the place. And by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're kind of rocking it. They're playing. They got it, okay? So that's vestibular. Now we're going to do proprioception. So what I want you to do is turn, okay? So turn to the side because we need some arm space and I don't want you knocking out your neighbor. So turn to the side here, okay? Now, in a moment I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, but I don't want you to do that yet. And you're going to put your arms out to the side and get your pointy fingers, and you're one at a time going to take your index finger and touch it to the tip of your nose with your eyes closed. So now close your eyes and see, can you touch the tip of your finger to the tip of your nose? Yes. Okay, you did not do this. Right? Most people did it. Proprioception is your sense of body position or body awareness. Where is your body in space? With your eyes closed, without listening, with nothing else going on, where is your body? We're going to do one more little activity. Everybody's going to get their bags of groceries. You're going to leave here today and you're going to go home and there's going to be no food. Because why is it there's never any food? I'm the mom of 5, and I promise you when I get home tomorrow, there will be no food. Okay? Did I say I was the mom of 5? I'm a mom of 3. I'm really, anyway. There are 5 in my family. There's 5 in my family. Not to exaggerate a little bit, just today it feels like I'm a family of 5. Okay, mamas. Of 5. So anyway, grab your groceries, and you're being very environmentally kind, and you get paper, not plastic. So you got to carry them like this. And let's say you live up 2 flights of stairs, and you are so tired, hold on to that bag, you're so tired you just cannot make 2 trips from your car today, so you're getting all your groceries at one time. Okay, and so we're going to step up the stairs. Everybody's going to pretend you're walking up the stairs. Now, keep going, keep walking. You know what? It's your sense of proprioception that allows you to reach those steps. Okay? So you're not looking at, you put your bags down now, you're not looking at your toes, you're not carefully walking. Maybe it's your sense of proprioception that's off in the middle of the night when you get up in the dark and you try to go to the bathroom and you walk into something. Not really. You didn't remember it was there. But that's your sense of body awareness. Your sensory receptors for proprioception are your ligaments, your tendons, your joints, and your muscles. All throughout your body. That's what sends those signals to the brain and says, here you are, hand. Now, back to that developmental sequence. How many of you all teach toddlers? 2-year-olds, okay? 2 and 3-year-olds, where you get new scissor skills going? What do those 2 and 3-year-olds who've never seen scissors before do? They pick them up and they do what? Yeah, and they do this. Overflow, we call that in the therapy world, because they're concentrating so hard and the drool's coming and their tongue's hanging out. They're like Michael Jordan, you know, and but they're watching their hands. How many of you all walk around the classroom and cut things and talk to the children and make sure that right? Because you're cutting strips of paper because you're making a chain and you're never looking. That's your proprioception at work. You know where your hands are, you know how to use them. Have a seat. Shoo, they say, woo, she's making us stand up way too long. So now we've got the normal sensory integration down pat. We know there's 7 senses. We know that they all work together to help us learn about the world, because your brain needs all of those 7 senses and the input from those to help it function effectively. Let's talk about what is a sensory processing disorder. Okay. So a child that has a sensory processing disorder, or an adult, because it could be a child or an adult, I'm just talking about children today, has a neurological problem with processing sensory input. Now, follow what I'm saying. It is not a problem with the input. Go back to your brain learning, those of you that have taken classes on that. It's not the input in the brain that's a problem. By that I mean, we're not talking about kids that are visually impaired, that are blind, hearing impaired, or have cerebral palsy and don't feel their muscles the same way that you do. So it's not that input. We're talking about kids that are hearing fine, seeing fine, feeling fine. But when that input gets into the brain goes bzzz and misinterprets that sensory input and files it in the wrong files, and therefore sends out signals to the body to respond in an inappropriate way. So one of the examples that I use in the book is that because this happens at my house a lot, especially at dinner time when I'm trying to answer the phone and coordinate my 3 children doing homework, is that we burn things, okay? So what is the proper sensory response to the loud noise of the fire alarm going off and the smell of the burnt food? Is that you would probably say, oh, that's really loud, turn it off, or open a door, window, right, air it out, turn it off, calm down. Okay. A child that has a sensory processing disorder with auditory input and possibly also olfactory smell, may scream at the top of their lungs, kick and scream, lay down on the floor, roll around, have a massive meltdown. Because their brain is saying, whoa, that was too much information, okay? So we all have little everyday problems with our sensory system. Okay, everybody does. This is a picture of me at Walmart. Now, this is Walmart land, and I'm really not vehemently opposed to Walmart as it is, but I do have a problem with my Walmarts. I live in a town of about 100,000 people, and it's a college town, but it's not really big. We have 3 Walmarts in our town. There's some outside of it, but 3. We have one that's new. The other ones are very old, and white floors and fluorescent lights, and they're extremely crowded, and lots of people yelling at their children and fussing at them and threatening to kill them and all those great things. And things are falling off the shelves. There's stuff everywhere. You can't find anything you want because it's all cluttered and a mess. And so how do I feel when I go to those 2 Walmarts like this? I want out as quickly as possible. Add on top of that my 5-year-old daughter, who does have sensory issues and lots of behavioral issues. She's fostered to adopt. And anyway, you'll hear more stories about her later in the day if you come to my sessions. But if you take her with me, so I have her on top of all that, I just want to hurt somebody. Okay? But do I? No. I make a better choice, and that is I shop at Target. Because it's, hey, can I get an amen on the Target? Okay, so in my town, we have a new Target with nice skylights and everything's organized. It's wide aisles and it's not as crowded, probably because it's more expensive, but you know what? It keeps me happy. So I made what we call in the therapy world an adaptive response. And I said, I can't really take it today to go to Walmart, so I'm going to Target. Or I make a different choice, which is I go to Walmart at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. That's almost always my students. If they ever see me there, they're like, you really do that. And I'm like, yeah, because there's nobody in there. People that have real sensory processing disorder are not able to make those adaptive responses. They cannot control the response. And that's the kids we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to give you some real examples of those kids, the most common ones that we see, and how do we handle those. So how common is this? How many kids in the United States have sensory processing disorder? Well, our latest research that has just come out, which was on 4 to 7-year-old typically developing kids. So this is kids who don't have another diagnosis like autism or ADHD or a learning disability, okay? Because some 7-year-olds have been diagnosed with that. So we're talking about typical 4 to 7-year-olds. The latest research, which just came out a little while ago, says 1 in 16. So what does that say to you guys? Are you going to have these kiddos in your classrooms? What? Yes. And you already have. And I was talking to a mama teacher out in the hall. Where are you, friend, that has her own child with an 11-year-old? Where are you? I don't see her. There you are. So my mama friend and I were talking about our children, and she said, that we just have always called them different kids, or something's just not quite right, or funky, strange, weird, a little off. You've had them all along if you haven't been able to recognize them, and you just really didn't know what was going on, but you knew something wasn't right. Okay? After today, I hope that you'll be able to identify these kids a little bit better and have a plan of action of how can you interact with them. So now I'm talking about kids with special needs. So if you do work or have any children with autism in your classrooms, if that does happen or it's suspected, maybe they haven't been diagnosed, but you suspect that they have autism, 93% of those kiddos also have a simultaneous diagnosis of sensory processing disorder. So you can guess, if you have a child who's on the autism spectrum, anywhere on that spectrum, they're very likely to have sensory issues going on too, okay? And for your older population, kids with ADHD, at least half of those kiddos also have a sensory processing disorder. But today we're primarily talking about our kids who are otherwise typically developing. Okay? What are some of the risk factors for sensory processing disorder? Low birth weight, prematurity, prenatal complications, maternal illness or stress, maternal age. The older the mama, the more likely the child to have a sensory processing disorder. And one that's getting lots of press right now, which is a special interest of mine, that I do research on in Tennessee, which is neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is addiction to, it's maternal opiate addiction. So the mom is using opiates and the child is born addicted to opiates. That's a massive United States issue. And like I said, it's been hot in the press right now. What are we going to do with the new Health Care Act? They're trying to add more money to research that. You all have those kids in your classroom. Texas, as of last I looked, which was back in December, does not have a system in place to monitor how many children are coming through their hospitals with this diagnosis. They're not counting them, but I can guarantee you have them. And their mamas look just like you and me sometimes. Okay, so it's rampant. So those kiddos are also at very high risk for having a sensory processing disorder. All right, so what I said was, to begin with, hey, it's really important that all 7 senses are in place and working together so that the child can learn. Because if any one of those 7 senses are not being understood correctly by the brain, then there's going to be some learning problems. And what might be some of those learning problems? Things like slow to develop fine motor skills, like writing. Remember the kid with the scissors, right? Well, when you get to 5 years old and they're still doing this because they don't know where their hands are, or they're running into all the other children out on the playground over and over again. I have a kid that we call Spider-Man, and I work and take my students to a university-based preschool where we train our students, our undergraduate and our graduate students in early childhood. And we have a little boy there right now that he splats on the wall, will run and just splat and runs into all his friends. Well, he's 4, extremely bright child. Dad is a physicist, PhD in physics, and mom is PhD in anthropology. Okay, very, very intelligent parents, and this kid has no friends at school. Why does he have no friends? Because he crashes into all of them. He runs into them, hits them straight up, or hugs them really tight. He has no clue where his body is. He falls all over the place. His handwriting is atrocious. He's reading on a 2nd grade level. He's 4, but he cannot write his name. He doesn't know where his body is. Okay, so that sort of problems, let's pull that back up. Unusually high or unusually low activity level. I'll be talking in my next session at 10:45, I think, 9:45 about the kiddos with the high activity level that are on the go all the time, and what do you do for those kids? Problems with self-care like tying shoes and buttoning. And here's one that my students, my OT students don't always get, but my teachers always do: low self-esteem. And this is one of our bigger problems that not everybody wants to address. Why do they have low self-esteem? Because they're not like everybody else. Do you all like Chuck E. Cheese? You don't? Me either. And I have one just across the street from our neighborhood. I mean, just literally a mile from my house. And we pass it every day, 4 times a day. But interestingly enough, it's always closed for cleaning. And my 5-year-old would say, "But Mama, there are cars in the parking lot." And my 17-year-old says it's because they need lots of cleaning. Because she's heard it for so many years, she knows the plan. That is, just in case you think I'm an awful mama, which I probably am, but I did take my 5-year-old for her 5th birthday to Chuck E. Cheese. So we will on special occasions hold. Now, why do I tell you that story? Because a lot of kids that have sensory processing issues, let's think about the environment at Chuck E. Cheese. Loud, lots of lights and flashing things and people everywhere, and it smells because they're making pizza and they're, just so much going on. And a lot of our kids say, "Wow, too much, too much, too much." And if their mamas drag them because they want them to be a part of that 4-year-old birthday party, and they take them there, they may spend time in the bathroom, or they may throw a temper tantrum and not participate, and they bring out the cake and they just cry and scream because they don't like cake. They don't eat cake. All they eat is chicken nuggets and French fries. Okay? So they're weird. They're different. They don't look like everybody else. And all the other 4-year-olds are like, "What's up with him?" Why do I say him? This is something I didn't say. Most of them are hims. About 75% of our kids who have sensory processing problems and sensory processing disorder are boys. Boys' brains are more susceptible to dysfunction. How many boys? Do I have any men in here? Yeah, you want to say anything about that? There's not one man? Y'all are kidding. Well, he doesn't count. I know, Ben. It's all right. Your brain's just fine, but okay. Hey, friend. There's one back there. I love you so much. Yay, let's clap. That's good. My husband is the only male teacher in a K-8 school. And you know what? He's always the kids' favorites. And my daughters say, it's not because you're the best, Dad, it's just because you're a guy. They're really hard on him. Okay, but anyway, it is mostly guys. All right, let's talk about this. 3 categories of sensory processing disorder. So, there are 3 main categories of sensory processing disorder. If you said a child had a learning disability, that really doesn't tell you much about that child because there are lots of different kinds of learning disabilities. Y'all know that, right? So the most common one is what? Dyslexia. Dyslexia. Most people have heard of dyslexia, but there's lots of other ones, okay? Sensory processing disorder is the same sort of thing. If you say a child has a sensory processing disorder, that really doesn't tell you that much. In the book, I break it down into all the different categories and let you have red flags for all 21 different types of sensory processing disorder. Today, I'm talking about 2 overarching, well, these first 3. Anyway, so there are 3 main categories. So there's sensory processing disorder, and then underneath that are 3 types, okay? And here's those 3. The first is a sensory avoider. And the sensory avoider is a child whose brain says, ow, 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 ow. So everybody say that as loud as you can. Ow, 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 ow. Too much, too much, too much. Look out, that's going to hurt you. That's too much information. I can't take it. Okay? So the brain misinterprets as this is going to be painful or it's going to hurt you. This is not good. On the other side are our completely opposite kiddos whose brain says, give me more, give me, give me, give me. So everybody's going to do that. Give me more, give me more, give me more, give me more. Come on. Act like you really want that piece of chocolate. Give me more. What's your drug of choice? Mine is sweet tea. Thank God for Texas. Because you can get that here. You go to New Jersey and you ask for sweet tea and they're like, huh. Okay, so this kiddo's brain says, give me more. What? Did you turn on the light? It's not bright enough. Let me stick my eye right up in that light so I can see it. Okay, did you put out some Play-Doh and we're playing in it? Oh, it's not enough to do this. I got to do this. I'm going to stick it in my ears. I'm going to rub it on my head, put it on my feet. I got to get more of that. Do you know that kid? I see y'all over there. Do you have that kid in your class? You are that? Are you that kid? You are that kid. God love you. Talk to me after this session. I'll help you. Okay, and then the final one is my ho-hum. Y'all know Eeyore? Okay, so everybody's going to go ho-hum. You got to do your head. Ho-hum. Okay, so this kid's brain says, I don't really care about that. So Eeyore's depressed, clinically depressed, so we won't talk too much about that, but I don't really care. All right, let's talk about the specifics of these 3 types and give you more red flags for those, okay? So you see that your brain can do very different things and respond very differently, okay? So a sensory avoider is the one that said what? Say it. Ow, ow, ow. Too much, too much, too much. So the brain is over-responding to a sensory input. The brain is over-responding. Okay? The brain is in fight, sends out signals, fight, flight, or freeze in response to this. That bear, well, let's see, what kind of varmints do you have around here? I use bears in Tennessee. Mountain lion, what do you got? What's your scary thing? Snake? Rattlesnake? Rattlesnake. Okay, so a big old snake comes right down this middle aisle. What do? Fight. You say, what's my gentleman's name back there? What's your name in the back? Dominique. Dominique, get it. And you get Dominique and he fights that snake. Okay? Or, I bet we part to sea right here. Just, everybody runs. Okay? There comes that snake right down the middle. Flight. Or some of you would do this. Freeze. You don't know what to do. I can't run this way. I can't run that way. Okay. So those are going to be your 3 responses to that brain's input that's sending out to say, information that's saying, this is going to hurt you. We have research, brain research, that shows that for children who are avoiders, their response could be 20 times the normal response, equal to that of a dentist drill without drugs or needles stuck into your inner ear. So if you learn nothing else from me today, I hope that you get from me that if you have a child in your classroom who is acting like that shaving cream or finger paint is going to kill them, and they're, or those green beans on their plate is making them gag, their brain is saying, ow, 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 look out, look out, look out. Okay? This is a real thing. It is, they're not in control of that feeling. Okay. And you could be a sensory avoider to any of the 7 or more than one of those 7 senses. Any of those 7 or more than one. Maybe you're a sensory avoider of 3 senses, 3 different ones. Okay? So, on the other side of the spectrum is the completely different kiddo. The kid that says, this is the seeker. What does the kid that's seeking do? What does his brain do? Gimme, 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 gimme. I can't get enough. Give me more, give me more. Come on. Did you turn on the music? Turn it up. Make it louder. If you don't do that, then I'll just sing the loudest of everybody. And when I talk, I'm really loud when I talk because I like to hear myself talk. Because I need more. Give me more, give me more. And you say, please use your inside voice. I am. So this child never seems to be satisfied. Can't get enough information, give me more. And they could seek one or more than one of our sensory inputs. Okay? And last but not least is our, who did I call this? Eeyore. Ho, ho. These are the least common. And we're not going to talk about these anymore today because they are the least common. But in the book, I do talk about how to handle these kiddos in the classroom, okay? So if you have one of these kids, you know, we give you some suggestions. But this kid's brain says, I don't really care. You're playing a song, and I'm supposed to be dancing, but I'll just sit here because my body doesn't really want to participate. Oftentimes, they seem to be low intellectually developing. So I have a lot of teachers that will say to me, I think he's got some learning problems. He just doesn't do anything. Or lazy. That's another comment I get from my teachers. He's just so lazy. He's like a wump. Or disinterested. Nothing I do. We have one right now who's 3. Whose mom is the teacher at our early childhood center, and he is, I call him my wind-up toy, because anywhere that you want him to go, he is a vestibular under-responder, so he does not move. He's chunky, he's kind of like a lump, he sits in the classroom. His favorite center is the library center. When they want to go outside, you have to take him by the hand and lead him outside. put him on whatever piece of equipment you want him to do, and when you think he's done with that, you have to take him by the hand and take him to the next piece of equipment. When you think he's done with that, you take him by the hand. You get the picture? All day long, every transition. And it's not that he doesn't want to do it. It's not that he's disinterested. He's actually a really bright child. We've already had him tested because initially the teachers were like, and his mom was like, I think he's intellectually challenged. He's not. He just doesn't. His brain tells him not to move. Okay? So you could have any of those 7. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. Most kiddos with sensory processing disorders have a mixture. Now, hold on. So our most typical pattern is a vestibular seeker, which is a movement seeker. That's the one I'm talking about in my next session. That mover, 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 on the go, Energizer bunny that never stops. That child who also is a tactile avoider, doesn't like to touch anything, doesn't want to get dirty, very picky eater, very picky about their shoes, their socks, their clothes, that kid. So they're a seeker of one input and an avoider of a different input. That's our number 1 pattern that we see. Okay? What you can't ever be is you can't be a seeker and an avoider of the same sensation. So you can't be a tactile seeker and a tactile avoider. It is not possible. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Hey, thank you. Okay, good. I'm glad I answered it before you asked it. So remember, as we talk about any of those kids today, and if you come to my session, we'll talk about several more of these. As we talk about them, no child is going to have all the red flags that I talk about, or most won't. I shouldn't say no. Most kids are not going to have all those red flags. And you have to look at the kid across time, and you all know this. As educators, you know you don't want to walk in today and make a decision about that kid at one moment. Because today could have been a bad day. Mama overslept. She didn't give you breakfast. Your baby brother was up all night long. You know, today was a bad day. And so, of course, your sensory level's up here. You started off feeling like everything's against you. So do look at them across time. And no 2 kids are alike, and that's what keeps it interesting for us. Okay? So now we're going to take one. There are 21 different sensory processing disorders that I cover in the book. Today we're going to talk about one, and this is the most common avoider. Okay? This is the most common avoider, and the one that I think most early childhood teachers are like, this is hard. This one's hard to deal with. Okay? So let's break it down for this kid. This is the kid who says, what? An avoider. What did the avoider say? What did the brain say? What? Louder. Remember, you're fight, flight, or freeze, so you're not just going, ow. You're 20 times. You're the dentist drill without the drugs. Ow. Ow! Okay? So the brain is saying ow, and is sending out signals, fight, flight, or freeze to tactile inputs, okay? So here are some common red flags, things to look for. A child who responds to unexpected touches in a negative manner. This is great, because if you're working in 2, 3, 4-year-olds, they're unexpectedly touched all day long. Because somebody bumps into them in the line. If you're walking to a lunchroom or a library, you're holding hands, and they don't want to do that. And one of the most common ones that we see in our pre-K program, we see this a lot, is, he hit me. He hit me. He hit me. And then the kid says, I didn't even barely touched him. But their brain says, he hit me. He accidentally bumped into me, and that was a hit. Okay, avoid messy experiences at all costs, all those fun things that most of us love to do, all those creative art experiences, and you're making little handprints, and you're making the reindeer out of the handprint, and they're like, blah! Under the table. An extremely picky eater, And think about this developmentally. If you were working with 2-year-olds, all 2-year-olds are picky. All 2-year-olds are picky. But not all 4-year-olds are picky. Okay? So look at them across that time, and what is typical for that age? Refuses to hold hands, does not, and this is the one that gets us at the core, because none of us are teachers for the money. Right? But what we do this for is for the love of the child. And so most of us are pretty lovey people. And this may be the kid that you leave at the end of the day and you think, he doesn't like me. Because they don't like to be hugged and loved. They don't like you doing that. Now, a lot of these kids will come and hug you. They might hug your leg, but they don't want you to touch them. Okay? And they will talk their way out of touching. So my 17-year-old, who is my biological daughter, is a tactile avoider. And to this day, she will try to talk her way out of doing things like washing her car, because she doesn't want to get her hands in the soapy bubbles to wash her car. Now, this is a straight A student. She's a senior in high school. This is a smart kid. She can talk her way out of almost anything, or as my husband says, a paper bag, right? Y'all know that story? Okay, but anyway, so she'll say, you know, I don't really have time to wash my car, but I do have extra cash for babysitting. I'll run it down to the car wash. Now take that down to the 4-year-old who says, my mom says it was not okay for me to eat any foods like this. Whatever that this is. My mom says, I don't need to eat that spaghetti. My mom says, I don't like chocolate pudding. My mom says, and they'll talk you out of it, okay? So let's talk about some suggestions for these kiddos. What are we going to do for them? Because that's really what you want to know in the next 15 minutes. How about you stand up? Can everybody stand up? I know, I feel the energy level. It's getting low. We've got 15 minutes to go. So let's see. We're going to do a little scooping up some sunshine today. Are you ready? So if you will turn, well, I don't know how that's going to work. Change my mind. We're not going to scoop up any sunshine. What we're going to do is we're going to turn to our very best buddy neighbor. It doesn't matter if you know them or not, but you need to find a neighbor, and you're going to ask them if you can hug. Now listen. Listen. You are going to use your words, and you're going to ask if you can hug them. Now, if they say no, which that is fair, you don't say, no, I don't want you to hug me, then what you need to do then is say, would you please hug me? Because some people are fine with giving the hugs. They just feel very uncomfortable getting the hugs. So you all work it out, okay? If both of you are no huggers, then here's what you're going to do. You're going to take your hands and you're going to cross them over and you're going to give yourself the biggest bear hug ever. Okay, stop. Stop, stop, stop. Stop. Now, when I say a bear hug, when you bear hug somebody, it should be so tight that you almost squeeze the breath out of them. So it's very tight. There shouldn't be all this chit-chatty. It should be, okay, so hug tight. Seat. So for some of you all, that may have sent you into a little bit of fight or flight. I hope it didn't fight you too much. Okay? But deep pressure is calming. If you come to my last session today, which is at 1:30, 1:45, I will be talking about how to calm spaces and children and help them get organized and calm. Okay, so here are our suggestions for our tactile avoiders. The very first thing is to establish trust. How many of you all have heard of Erik Erikson? He was a theorist, okay, who wrote some wonderful developmental theory, I think. And his first stage of psychological or psychosocial development is trust versus mistrust. And what he said, and this is for children between the ages of 0 and 2 years of age, he said if you don't let a child feel trust, they will carry, at this young age, they will carry a sense of mistrustfulness throughout the rest of their life. So we see that with our kids, like my kiddo, my 5-year-old, who was a foster child, who had a mother who's a drug addict and never got consistent care. So she's very mistrustful of the world and people around her. This goes for all of you all. I don't care what age you're working with. I hope after today that you will trust that what they are saying, what the child is saying, or I'm going to do my air quotes, saying, because sometimes they don't have the words to tell you. They will show you. The first step is to trust that what they are telling you is the truth. It is the truth for that child. So if that child says, to that Play-Doh that you brought out, you have to trust that their brain is saying, ow, 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 that's going to hurt me. And so instead of saying, oh, put your hands in it, it's the best thing ever, here, let me do it for you, and you putting their hands on it, you say, I can see you don't want to touch that. Would you like to try it with some tools? Could I get you out a spoon or a fork or a rolling pin and let you try it that way? And they say, no. How about putting on some gloves and trying it? Because I've got some gloves over here in the diaper changing area. Can I give you some gloves and you could try? No. Well, how about you sit here and watch? You know, take it back to whatever level they're comfortable with. If you force, so that's one of our rules, is do not force the child to touch or interact or eat. Eat and touch, same thing. Do not force them to eat or touch. Because if you do that, and we've all done that, I've done that as a mom, you just got to take one no thank you bite. How many times have I said that? Here. Okay. But once you've done that, you've lost that child's trust. Because that child now says, you don't care about how I feel. You don't believe me. And you will never build experiences with a child who doesn't trust you. So that's the overarching protocol for this kid. Talk to them. Look for other alternatives, other avenues. Think about what your goals are for that activity. If you are digging in dirt, you're doing a science activity and you're talking about God's earth and how the earth was created and you're doing dirt and blah, blah, blah. Think about what your goal is for that learning experience. Are there other ways to meet that goal without that child putting his hands into the dirt? And modify it, okay? So you want to explain what is happening. So you want to use your words and tell that child. So today we're going to work in the sandbox. I've put a bunch of soil in there. And we're going to do dirt and water. And we're going to see what happens when we add water to dirt. Talk about what the experience is going to be. Help them work through possible potential other options, and then model playful experiences. Well, y'all got this in the can because you, unlike me, when I work with these kids one-on-one in a therapy environment, you got other children to model playful interactions. So you have a whole group of other kids. Call attention to that. Look how much fun Jeremiah's having, playing with the dirt and the water. Watch how he pours one cup into the next cup. Look how that mixes. Watch, you get the gist, right? Because you all know they're going to learn more from their peers in those interactions, and they're much more likely to try it later. Okay? Be very patient. It takes a lot of time. Prevent unexpected touches when possible. When you've got this kiddo, don't sit them for snack in the middle of the table with two kids beside them. Put them on the end where they're by themselves. When they're walking in line out to the playground, put him with you first or let him be last. Don't put him in the middle. When you're sitting in circle, put him beside you. Don't put him in the middle. Because you're not going to unexpectedly touch him, but all his friends will. Okay. Allow the child to initiate the touch. That means don't take your hand and force them to touch things. Okay. So let the child do it themselves. And lastly, when you're doing tactile things, especially for this kiddo, one thing at a time. If you've got a kid that's very tactily avoidant, and you give them a plate full of mashed potatoes, green beans, and spaghetti, 3 very different textures, and then put some applesauce on the side. And this is a kid who only eats pizza from Papa John's, a very specific diet. They're not going to be likely to eat any of those things because it's, okay, so we're times 20, times 2, times 3, times 4, because you got 4 different items. Does that make sense? So if you just can help them focus on one thing, you're much more likely to get them to participate. All right? Here's a really simple one. So everybody's going to turn to their neighbor and say, "Good morning, this is the best session ever," in your loudest voice. "Morning, this is the best session ever." Now turn to them and whisper and say, "Christy, Isbell rocks." Okay. You know what? When children get overwhelmed by the noise level in the room, which is a lot of kids do this, even typical kids do this a lot. When the noise level is high, your beginning sensory processing level is here. Let's say normal is here. It's like you feel at the end of the day at these conferences. You don't want to talk to anybody else. That's the way I feel. If I've gone all day and I've listened to people because I'm used to talking, so when I go to conferences and I have to sit, first thing I hate, and then I have to listen all day long, you know, I'm like, whoo! Nobody talked to me for a while. These kids, their level, if you started them off here with a loud and noisy and bright classroom, and then you add something that's a sensory avoider for them, now they're up here. So, quiet your voice. Whisper to the child. Talk less. Talk less. I know we got to help them learn language. I'm all about it. But when they're having a moment, talk less, whisper. Turn off the lights. Use your natural sunlight for a few minutes. See if you can get everybody settled down. Okay. All right, and lastly, I want to tell you before you leave here, if you have you guys, in most instances, are going to be the people that identify these kids first. Because you've got them before they go to school. Their pediatricians on average spend 4 minutes with them. 4 minutes. You spend 4 minutes on the first day and the first 4 minutes, and then hours, okay? So if you notice these kiddos in your classroom, here's some recommendations, okay? Talk to the parents, share your observations, use your old sandwich technique. Y'all know that one, right? Say something really great about the kid, Tell them your concerns, here's something you've seen, and then sandwich it in on the other side with something really great about that child. Talk to them about that and then share with them opportunities for a thorough evaluation and treatment, which would be an occupational therapist, a child psychologist, or a developmental pediatrician, okay? And you all have those in Austin. You have all of those people. You have developmental pediatricians, and you can make referrals to the school systems through Child Find. So please remember how important you are for the process